we're about to launch a series of case studies. So I strongly advise you all to stay in the room. And our next topic will be around education, which as individual, I believe we all agree that, education is of the utmost importance for our children, for sure. And the PE industry has grown a strong interest in the topic on the past few years, and I can testify on this because at Indéfi, we are a strategy advisory firm, and we advise GPs on their investments. And I must say that most of my colleagues, I've been working on education deals this past years quite a lot, and some of them even became experts on the field. So without further words on the topic, I'm really pleased to welcome on stage Jonathan from Educa Capital. No, sorry. Laurence from Educa Capital and Jonathan from Citizen Capital and Jonathan from Educa. Yeah, well, your names will be here in a few minutes. Sorry about that. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. I think we have the hardest time, just after lunch and before departure. So I hope we can make something perhaps interactive. So we can have perhaps a small discussion about measuring, impact and in the education and training space. So I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Marie-Christine. Laurence is the founder of Citizen Capital, but we're good friends, so that's not a problem. I'm Marie-Christine Levé, and I'm the co-founder of EduCapital. EduCapital is, I don't know how we switch the slides.
I believe there is a clicker over there.
Otherwise, I can just explain to you. EduCapital is the first European fund dedicated to EdTech and future of work. And that means, future of education and future of work. So we are an impact fund, and we invest in EdTech champion leaders, companies that bring innovation in the education and training sectors. So basically, we create the fund because we start from the idea that the education system was having a lot of problems, facing a lot of challenges. The first challenge was that we had, a declining education system with a very inegalitarian one. In most of the European countries, we are going down into all rankings in terms of education surveys. We have a lot of young people going out of schools, and there's a big skill gap between companies that are looking for talents and students out of the education system that do not face jobs. So this whole skill gap, has a cost for the global economy of more than $11 trillion. So there's a big challenge there, and the idea is that we think that platforms and technology can help scale education, democratize education, and also train people to the 21st century challenges. So that was the reason why we created Capital, and the idea is to invest in European EdTech champions. So we are in the second fund. We had the first fund in 2017, and we have launched the second fund. We have 185 million euro under management with these two funds, and we invest in Europe from K-12 up to lifelong learning and corporate training. In fact, the education sector is quite vast because you begin from nearly early childhood and you follow the individual during all his lifetime, and when he's also employed. So we are looking at this, all these EdTech sectors, and we're also looking at all the future of work sectors, from employee engagement, employee benefits, employee coaching, and this whole challenge of upskilling and reskilling workers. So we are an impact fund. So our idea in terms of impact is really, we have three missions. The first one is really to invest in companies that are able to democratize education and access to the maximum number of people. It's the rich. The second one is inclusion, is be able to help, either disadvantaged children or children with problems or unemployed people to find a job back, and thanks to education. And the third one, which is, I think could be a debate because this is the most difficult to measure, is the learning outcome. The nearest you are to the job, you can measure if unemployed people have gone back to work. We can discuss that in the K-12, which is the early age segment. It's the one that is the most difficult to measure. So we are a classical impact fund, Article 9, and we are completely aligned with the impact score of our companies. We calculate an impact score, and 50% of the carried of the team is linked to the achievement of impact indicators. So there's no more slide, but I can describe you. I wanted to describe you 2 case study. And the one it's interesting that we did together, so we can have even a discussion on the second one. The first one is we have invested in a company called Prep Academy in France. They are doing upskilling and reskilling for vocational training for blue collar people. Most of these. So I can go back to the slide. So I give you an example of this company. They are targeting, blue collar, where there's a big high demand for jobs. It could be construction jobs in the hospitality sector, jobs in the health areas, and big demand for jobs. Not enough people trained. A lot of people are in companies and they need to be upskilled, and this company address this problem, and basically by providing online training with mentoring for 1 year for people that are either unemployed and are able to go back to a job, or people that are in organization that need to be upskilling. We have a stat that says that 1/3 of most of the workers do not have the adequate skills in their jobs. So there's a big challenge in corporate and companies to upskill workers. So in terms of how do we measure, impact on this type of company, we look at number of people trained, we look at how people that have been able to find a job again, and we look at efficiency of learning, because, in learning, in traditional learnings, there's a big stats that's, only 10% of traditional learning is efficient. So we really look at completion and efficiency of learning. Second example I want to speak about, and we did it in common, is Chance. Chance is a French company. It's a career guidance platform. It's a 3 months program for people to really assess themselves and find, what they want to do in their life. So it's totally online with mentoring. It's 30 hours of program. And in terms of how do we measure, the efficiency of this type of company, so we look at 3 indicators, number of people, the same type of indicators, number of people that have been able to have access to the program, then inclusion, how many people with a salary lower than 1,400 euro or 2,000 euro that have been able to have access to this type of program, because up to now, all this type of program were often reserved to top management. And then we look at learning outcome, how many percentage of people that have been able to find their new projects thanks to this program online. So these are examples of what we're doing. I think what is quite interesting to say is that, the 2 examples I've been presenting you is like in the upskilling of workers, or lifelong learning and the future of work. This is where you are quite the most able to measure learning outcome, because it's mostly based on finding a new jobs. The earlier you go into the age, meaning when you go into a children age with children that are in a primary school or elementary schools, measuring learning outcome is quite tough, because you need to follow the children, on a different year after year. And this is where, we are really at the beginning of all this impact measurement, in this area. And it's quite interesting to be able to build the whole methodology on this impact measurement. So this was about EduCapital. And
hi everyone, thanks Marie-Christine. Hi everybody, thanks for staying so late. Maybe you can go. So I'm Jonathan, I'm the partner in charge of the growth fund at Citizen Capital. I'm not sure if the presentation is on already. Otherwise I can just talk to you. Citizen is one of the pioneer of what we call today impact investing in France. When we founded the fund 15 years ago, the term was not yet coined. What we do basically is we try to back entrepreneurs who really carry a vision to transform the society positively. So we mostly invest in innovation, and that means that we've been active in the startup world for quite a while now. And also we try to focus on what we call fundamental needs. So we've mapped basically the themes that are of interest to us and that are the most pressing issues that we face in a French or European context in the 21st century. And we invest from very early stage till growth capital tickets from 500K to 10 million through various vehicles that we manage. In terms of themes, we group them into 3 large categories. The first one is called life essentials, so the basic needs of human beings, with really focus on inclusion and making sure that vulnerable people get access to all those really fundamental products or services. Healthcare, housing, food, financial inclusion, etc. The second one, which is more of interest today, is a theme that we call human empowerment, where basically we try to support people and to enable them to live rich and fulfilling life and develop their full potential. And that's where the education and professional training areas fit in. And then we have a focus on more environmental issues that we call regenerative economy. Our investments, so we've been investing in all those categories for quite some time now. We have 3 really education or training investments that we made. Actually, 2 of them are co-investment with EduCapital, and so I will not talk too much about Chance, which Marie-Christine already presented, or Lalilo, which was a software to learn reading for children in school. That was used a lot during the lockdowns 2 years ago. I will talk a little bit about Open Classroom later, which is a platform to train on and to certify people for the digital economy, basically. Our thesis in education, as we come from the impact sphere, we are a multi-sector fund. We are not a specialist in education, but what really drove the fact that we included education in our investment themes are, I just put 2 numbers that are of interest. The first is 1.6. If you are today part of the bottom 10% of the population in terms of income, then it will, in average, take 6 generations for your family to reach the average income in France. I think the OECD average is about 4, so it's still long. It's 180 years. So basically, you will never reach it. And the second one is 14.4 versus 5.3. That's the unemployment rate if you don't or if you have a higher degree in France. So basically, you're 3 times more likely to be unemployed if you don't have a higher education degree in France. And so that's why our thesis is based on really 3 key items in education. We want to invest in companies that develop superior educational product. We need to understand what's the additionality of the product, what's new that they're bringing to the market and that help children or adults to learn more efficiently and to develop their skills more. We want those products to be accessible to all and everybody, and actually we are actually looking proactively so that those products are made available to the most vulnerable and the people who really need it, which excludes a lot of the educational market, actually, and private schools and tuition, etc. And then we, as well as Marie-Christine, as we are an impact fund, we've been working a lot on our impact strategy. And so we really want to make sure that there is a measurable impact. And here I put /outcomes because I completely agree with Marie-Christine. It's extremely difficult to really measure impact in terms of education. I mean, how do you measure the impact of teaching children how to read properly or how to read better than he was? I mean, something that you should measure across his whole life. And even with professional training, actually, I mean, you can measure if somebody has found a job 6 months or 1 year or 18 months after the training, but is that job better than what he would have gotten without the training? And then you have a lot of biases around when I take open classrooms, for instance, and if somebody who goes to open classroom, take a class and then find a job, I mean, is that person really representative of his age class, or was it already somebody that was keen to develop his skills and so he was specific enough and he could have done otherly? So it's actually in education, my feeling is that we are more measuring outcomes. That's why it's important to develop a theory of change that makes sense, even though it doesn't, pass the burden of proof of most scientific, causation and impact measurement thesis. Also bearing in mind that we're investors, we are not microeconomists, we are not foundation and philanthropists, so we need to have KPIs that are measurable, that are of interest to our entrepreneurs, so that they actually want to discuss them, to try to find ways to manage them and to monitor them. And if we come with too heavy burdens in terms of what we want to measure and have counterfactuals and all those fancy stuff, it really doesn't work. And that's our experience. Just to give you one example, so I talked about Open Classroom, so it's an online training platform. They develop MOOCs, so massive online open courses, especially to train people around the digital economy. So developer, community manager, marketing, digital marketing, etc. And what we really were interested in when we invested in Open Classroom in 2016 is that the two entrepreneurs came to us with this vision of making education accessible to everybody. And so it's really embedded in the whole organization, from the way they devise the courses, which are actually accessible to anybody. First, because it's digital, so you can take it from anywhere in the world, but also because the pedagogy has been built so that even if you don't have baccalaureate, you can actually start a class at Open Classroom and get a degree. And second, they really had a strong focus on helping people to find a job. So every time you start a training with Open Classroom, you'll get a mentor that will get through all the training, and then we actually support you in your job search afterwards for 6 months. And the value proposition was that if after 6 months you don't have a job, then you get reimbursed on the tuition fees. So they really kind of were walking the talk in terms of impact, and that's what pleased us. And similarly to EduCapital, we always try to monitor what we're doing with those companies. And Open Classroom was a good example of what you can do with education and what are kind of the limits. So we are able, and we've been monitoring and reporting on how many people would pass classes, and of those people, what were the profiles, to make sure that we're actually delivering on this promise to help the people who need it to get those classes, those skills. Then you can also measure how many people get diploma, which is fundamental in the job market. And then you can try to track people who get jobs. And here is where it gets tricky. So it's quite easy when you have a mentor that for you for 6 months to have feedback 6 months after. It's quite difficult to know where people are going 12 months, 18 months, 24 months after graduation. And so we have really struggled with Open Classroom, and we still have not found a proper way to measure long-term outcomes of the education. Just because, again, if you rely only on surveys, you have a bias because people who actually succeed tend to answer to you because they like you and they like having interaction with you. And we believe that those people that you cannot get hold of are maybe the one who for whom it's most difficult. So I guess my takeaway from that is that we have to be very humble about impact measurement. I mean, it's important to do it, and as Marie-Christine, we also base part of our variable remuneration on the achievement of those impact objectives. But you have to be extremely humble about what you're measuring, especially when you're dealing with kind of human material. It's hard to track. It's how to make sure that it actually represents your theory of change, but it's a duty that we owe. I mean, those companies, because it really helped them think around the strategy. And one last example about Open Classroom, we actually with them decided not to invest in some areas and some potential diversification project because it was not in line with the mission. And so it can really be something that helps you drive a company, and we are sure that the success so far, I mean, they've grown 50-fold since we invested, is based on this honesty and the fact that they're true to their word about impact. And I'll pause there. Maybe we have a few minutes to take questions.
Thank you. You both talk a lot about impact measurement, and I'm because I come from a very different sector. How do you measure? Is it some people inside your structures that actually do the evaluation and measurement, or do you take some external consultants that do the measurement, and throughout how long? And second link question is, as I imagine that your investors clearly, well, you invest the money of investors that truly believe in education. However, how do you link your impact measurement of education towards actually they invest money, and clearly they want a return on their money, and as much as they believe in education, clearly they invest for money. So
basically, in terms of the impact indicators, we do that with the entrepreneurs. As they prepare in financial business plan, like in other areas, they are also committed to impact business plans. So it's really something that we have to align with them, and the alignment goes very far because it's also aligned with our carried interest. Then we have an impact committee, that is composed of our major investors that also review and approve the different impact criteria. And in terms of measurement, I think for the first two one, the reach and the inclusion, basically it's KPI that the entrepreneurs are following. And for learning outcome, this is where I think it's important to work with external institutes. Like for example, for education, it's something you can work with laboratories and researchers. And we have some of our investors, that are foundation that really want to also invest a lot into this, measurement of impact and learning outcome, and how technology can really, and innovation can really improve learning and improve the engagement of young people.
Yeah, I fully agree with what Marie-Christine said. Maybe a couple examples, especially in the education sector. So when you are actually working on the transaction and participating in the capital raising, it goes fast. So we work a lot with the entrepreneurs to build this theory of change. If they don't, some really have already thought about it and they come with a clear mission. Others don't. So we try to work with them before the investment on that and to set the KPIs and to project an ambition. But very often, and it actually happened with Open Classrooms, it happened with Chance, we also decide that, okay, this is, at the time of the investment, that's the ambition, that's the shared ambition, but then let's try to work with external advisors to really refine the theory of change, and actually we're doing it at the moment with Chance, so to make sure that it's solid and it's been kind of validated by external specialists, and then it makes it easier to then communicate it with our own investors. And then we don't use so much auditors because those are business KPIs. They are, we don't really need to send auditors to make sure that we have that much people that actually follow the class or whatever. In other areas, we do it when it's more like energy related, and then the numbers can be more difficult to get. And then to your other point, which was about what our investors are. I think so. We have mostly institutional investors, and they are interested by impact, but they also come, and see us as a VC or growth fund. So they are expecting traditional returns for the risk they're taking with our investments, and that's why we really focus on solutions where we think that impact is a strong value creation driver, and there is no kind of balance or trade-off between what we call impact and what financial return, because we think that impact would drive the growth, and that's, if I take the example of Open Classroom, it's because they demonstrated that they can really, for a very in a cost-efficient way, put people back at work, or people that were in jobs that are being disrupted at the moment, reskill them, upskill them, so that they can, within the same company, maybe not lose their job, but just change department. Because they've been able to demonstrate that, they now have a lot of programs with Pôle emploi, so the state. So they pay a lot of programs so that they can train unemployed people, etc. And we really think that that's because they manage to prove their social impact, that they're getting those contracts. So really see value creation and impact and scaling impact go hand to hand.
Yes, and I think that really in the education areas, financial performance and social impact goes hand in hand, because the first criteria is the reach. How you maximize the reach of your platform of education, and the more you have the more learners you have, the better financial performance you will have. So they really go hand in hand. For example, we invest in a Spanish company called Preply. It's a language marketplace, to learn languages with teachers all over the world. They are present in 150 countries, so they have a big reach, and the biggest the reach they will have, the better the results. So it goes hand in hand.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you both, Marie-Christine and Jonathan.
Thanks for having us.